city council to vote against it. So they've been able to spread us out. So we're fighting the battles out here, but man, we're fighting so many battles at once, and they've made it that way on purpose. So other than electing people like Ron Paul and Rand Paul and Tom McClintock and several others into Congress in order to reverse this thing, I'm just telling you, this is a very strong uphill battle.
We're a rich country. Criminals figured out a great scam to take over. And people say, well, why do they work 40 years to get this? They were collecting money from well-meaning people the whole time, building their criminal operations, getting old ladies to sign their land over to them. I mean, just incredible filth. The criminal viciousness of these people. I mean, I keep using that term because they are vicious mafia trash. I mean, people talk about Scientology, you know, being this organized thing. Folks, this is a billion times bigger than that. We'll be right back. All right, folks, we're taking 20 minutes of calls with our guests, and I'm going to get into other world news. We're going to go to Jenny, then Michael, Mark, Dave, Mark, and many others that are holding. Our guest, who, by the way, is talk show host in his own right and former TV weatherman, and you name it, you can tell that. In fact, maybe so I can get, I'm sure he's a busy guy, get Brian Sussman to fill in on the show, because we're always looking for great people to sit in. A lot of times I'm here working when I have folks every few weeks sit in for a day or two, just because I'm launching so many new things. I'm busy, but I bet Brian is as well. But I'd like to invite him sometime from San Francisco, where he's based, via Skype to host the show. Brian Sussman, again, best-selling author. Eco-Tyranny is the book, available at InfoWarsShop.com. We've been talking about their criminal takeover and the fact that we've won the battle intellectually. They don't care. They're just focusing on brainwashing our kids. Let's go to Jenny in Florida. You're on the air with our guest. Go ahead, Jenny.
Yes, hi, Alex. I've been watching and listening to your show for about a month. Found it on Facebook when you had the Dracula photo of Obama, and I thought that was so interesting. And I thought, I got to know more about who this Alex Jones is. And my ex-husband first told me about this New World Order and all this stuff in 2006. And I said, you are nuts. You're absolutely nuts, because I'm a retired federal officer. So I'm like, you're nuts. You know, you're just against the government. But no, after all the evidence that you've presented. Anyway, shortly, I wanted to get to the point is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Morse family in Florida, but they own the villages in Florida. They own 33 miles, square miles, I just looked it up, of Florida land, and their goal is to take over all of Florida for retirees and have them live in these little villas, these little condos, this little, niche, kind of thing.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Bloomberg wants to follow Germany's suit. Germany's passed a law that by 2020, and it's phased in, you get tax incentives or penalized if you don't. No more single-family homes. You must live in these collectivized homes. And I have a UN book from 1980 for U.S. school kids where they told us in the future we wouldn't live alone but in dormitories. Let me get a comment from our guest on that, and then you come back, Jenny in Florida.
Alex, you're spot on. This is a UN plan, and it was incorporated into Agenda 21 in 1992 and reiterated when this last UN conference a few weeks ago. But the idea is to get people certainly out of rural areas, return that back to nature, get people out of suburbs and herd them into urban areas, concentrating them in stack and pack housing, as I like to call it, next to urban transportation hubs. So the idea is no more cars, no more choices, certainly no more houses in the suburbs. And one of the reasons that they'll be able to do this if they continue is because the price of energy is going to be so out of sight that you won't be able to afford.
That's like Obama said. He said, you can have a coal plant, but we're going to bankrupt you.
Exactly. So get you out of the 2,000 square foot house into a little condo, a little hovel where you'll be able to monitor your footprint, a carbon footprint a little more easily. This plan comes right from the United Nations.
But it gets better. Al Gore will have 7 houses, some of them 20,000 square feet, and all these jets and things, and you'll pay him to even be able to use carbon so he can live in giant palaces.
Yeah, and I think I've written some of the most damning stuff on Al Gore in both Climategate and Eco-Tyranny, and I get a kick out of this. He has one of his beautiful homes here in San Francisco, and it's interesting because it's located in this area that he says will become a flood zone. So,
yeah, it's incredible. Jenny, any other points?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the Morrises are very good friends with the Bush family, and to tout, environmentalism and all this stuff. They were just families of theirs. I don't know which Moore family was involved, but they were just busted hunting big game in Yellowstone. So,
All right, well, I don't know about that particular family. I'll have to look into it. But, yeah, Bush signed on to all this because it's big business. This is big business. The big multinationals, Goldman Sachs, they're bankrolling it because they're going to make you live where they want and they own the property. It's feudalism. It's mafia. We'll be back with our guests and your calls. All right, we've got this long segment here with our guest, best-selling author Brian Sussman. He's a meteorologist, radio talk show host in his own right, and he's written Eco-Tyranny along with ClimateGate and The Greatest Hoax that are all available at InfoWarsShop.com. I should add, discounted with this free citizen rule book. Knowledge is power, and that's why you should get the book, read it, and then pass it on to others. We're taking phone calls in this segment. Then I'm going to get into the incredible economic news and then the military news, as well as some police state and Second Amendment news, some Stasi news. It's all coming up after our guest leaves us. Let's go ahead and talk to Michael in Texas, listening on 1630 AM KKGM. Then we'll go to Mark and others. Michael, you're on the air. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, gentlemen. Comment and question. Comment. I just finished up an international study tour trip as a part of my UT Dallas Exec MBA program. We visited China, the apple of David Rockefeller's eye, and we visited a company that was required part of the trip. It's called Digital China. You've got to look it up. Have Paul Watson or his brother look it up, or one of your other great authors. This company developed smart cities, and one of their features, their new exciting feature that the presenter told us about, was that you had to have all of your food scanned. If you lived in one of these smart cities, before you put it in the refrigerator or the freezer, it had to be barcoded and scanned so that the government knew everything you have in your refrigerator and your freezer.
Oh, no. Sir, let me stop you. They're building a smart city in the middle of Austin with federal and globalist money. They're building them in New Mexico, Arizona, California, and these are tentacle command bases where they bankrupt you and let the first slaves live for free in them behind barbed wire.
Yes.
Then, I'm not joking, I'm showing photos right now if you're watching on prisonplanet.tv, and they subsidize others then in the next ring of the prison while penalizing people that don't enter into it. So it's siege, it's economic warfare, and they say in the future, they already subsidize old folks who live in these retirement places where they scan everything in the refrigerator. This is the total model of control, but you're saying you were sent there, and there they were promoting it. When you hear smart growth, think feudalism. When you hear smart meter, think spy meter, slave meter. When they say smart growth or smart meter, look out. Let's get a comment here from our guest.
Yeah, and again, everything Alex has said is absolutely true, and I've done a lot of research on the smart meter, the home area network, the smart grid, the Energy Star appliances. They're all working together to monitor every move you make inside of your home and, for that matter, outside of your home. And another facet of this, Alex, is, of course, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a plan to make driving, and again, this is a plan that has been legislated, and now they're studying it to put it forward and into practice to make driving 5 times more expensive to get us out of our car and into mass transit. And one of the other things that they're really seriously considering is putting GPS units on our vehicles so they will tax us by the mile. But all of that said, again, if you're going to have nationalized health care, well, then don't you think the government, of course, then is going to tell you what you should eat? That's why they want to monitor every food stuff that you'll have in your home.
Oh, no, it's already started in England. They have ads for computer companies on TV for Germany where all the cars are tracked and taxed, but also they're scanning where you're going and marking that down with all the little RFID, and that they don't have to dig through your trash can to give you $5,000, $3,000 fines like Miami does. All of it is scanned by garbage trucks that drive by, making sure you put it all in the right bin. I mean, it is a hell level of surveillance.
Yes, and again, this is the entire planet. It's in the name of saving the environment, which is a bunch of crap. It's not about clean air. It's not about clean water. This is about using these phony crises to get us under control. Because again, let's just go back to Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, who believed that most of us don't have a brain capable of regulating our behavior, and therefore we need the elites to keep us under control. Otherwise, we'll go wild, kill one another, and destroy the planet.
Meanwhile, yeah, sorry, caller, go ahead.
No, all 43 people, I mean, these are C-level executives in companies all over the world that go into this program. It's called the Global Leadership Executive MBA, and they're all clapping. Wow. And I asked the question, I said, well, why does a population of 1.4 million people have worries about food safety? Have they ever before? I mean, the population is absolutely exploding. And I use your statistic, Alex. I mean, you got a greater chance of dying of a bee sting than you do of a terrorist, hurting the food supply. And they all laughed at me. They all, that's ridiculous. I mean,
no, it's a total cult because they know they're there to show they're going to clap, to be minions in the new tyrannical hell system with the control freaks, as the CIA director bragged, watching you through all your appliances and controlling it. And then when you don't feed your kids right, they say they're going to come take your kids from you. I mean, these people are unbelievable.
Animals. Yeah, and the other part is, Alex, you talked about the other day, and I know you've never, ever, ever called for violence. There's never been a greater advocate of the information war as a way to beat these people. But, I mean, at what point does a warrior poet, even George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, say, okay, now it's time to defend ourselves? I mean,
well, here's the deal. Here's the deal. They staged Oklahoma City and other events to blame it on libertarians and conservatives because they want to make us morally the bad guys. Okay, so what we have to understand is we're having a better effect waking people up. We're winning the culture war now. They're accelerating things, acting even crazier. We have a chance of beating them. I'm not going to a FEMA camp, which they now admit. I'm not, that they've set up. I'm not going to one of their re-education centers. Nobody's forcibly inoculating my children. But that's defensive. Let's get Brian Sussman's take on that question.
Well, offensively, some of the things we could do if we would just have some people who are constitutionally motivated in the Congress, and there are some, as you know, Alex, but not enough. We need to dismantle the Department of Interior. This is one of the things I talk about extensively in Eco-Tyranny. We don't need national parks. The founders never wanted us to have national parks. Let's give those national parks, those national wetlands, those national marine sanctuaries, let's give those back to the states. They could probably make them cash-positive endeavors, and then they can decide what to do with the land, the resources, etc. That's one thing we should do. The other thing that's so obvious is shut down the EPA. Every state has their own EPA. Ours in California makes the federal EPA look like a bunch of pikers. We don't need the EPA. So those are some of the things we could begin doing right now to bring some sanity and constitutional morality back into the equation.
And by the way, it was David Rockefeller that financed the entire National Park Program to create the modern environmental movement. It was about keeping people from going out west and getting their own land. It was basically about them gobbling it up and controlling it. And now they've used those under the biospheres and other systems to grab land outside the parks.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Rockefeller's doctoral thesis, and it was about these very issues. So it's nothing that was hidden. But again, it's all about the information, Alex, as you know. If you take the time to dig up the data, you will see that this has been in the oven of bad ideas for a long time.
Let's go to another caller here quickly. Let's talk to Mark listening on KOMY 1340 AM in Santa Cruz, California. You're on the air with our guest.
Yes, sir. There are people going door to door, knocking on doors of people they don't know, saying, tune into KOMY 1340 right now. And, I sure hope that Brian Sussman will sit in for you, Alex. I think he would make a great substitute. I would like to say that Dr. Sam Keen, during the Gorbachev World Summit Conference a few years ago there in Brian's land there in San Francisco, got a standing ovation when he said we need to kill 90% of the world's population. Eliminate 90% of the world's population. And if you think I'm lying, Dr. Stan, Brian Sussman's good friend on RadioLiberty.com, has